Marcus Davis, a living legend in the world of audio post production, has created a symphony of success spanning two thrilling decades.
Ended up traveling to Asia and kind of working with a corporation there as a professional singer. And then that started my whole journey of living and, building a career. Floating around the Philippines with with everything in our lives, about 10 suitcases of luggage, jumping from hotel to hotel, not knowing anything about the Philippines. We didn't have a bank account. We didn't have a cell phone. We just had some cash. And we couldn't even get a bank account because we didn't have the proper ID. But with each adversity came an opportunity for us to get stronger. It came an opportunity for us to, get that grit that we were going to need. Because then once all those problems were solved,
Marcus, we always like to start off with asking our guest, tell us about yourself.
hi, I'm Marcus. I am 43. I live currently in the Philippines. I guess this show will be about how I got there. And I currently run a company that is in the audiobook industry. We do post-production services for the audiobook industry. Prior to that, I've been a music producer, composer, worked in film and television, and worked with different artists around the world. So that's a little bit about myself, and I'm sure we'll get to know a little bit more about me as this show continues.
Okay, well, thank you with that, Marcus, and we'll just start jumping right into this right here. As I opened up, I posed this first to our audience, and that is, how would they survive leaving everything that they were accustomed to and going into an entire new society? So before we get to where you were explaining that, let's talk about part of your journey. How did you end up in Asia?
Well, initially, I didn't come to the Philippines. I went to Japan, and I ended up there because I was a professional singer working at Disney, and I had an opportunity to go from Disneyland to working in Universal Studios Japan with a boy band. So that's how I ended up traveling to Asia and kind of working with a corporation there as a professional singer. And then that started my whole journey of living and building a career in Asia.
Now, was that frightening at first? Well, you were with Disney, so you were kind of in a convenient situation.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's like a bubble, right? It's
Okay.
not reality. They put you in a situation that's very comfortable. And the accommodations are all taken care of, and you're orientated, and you're brought into a system that has been in place and functioning long before you, that is tailor made to bring Americans into a particular culture and make that transition smooth. So that was helpful to say the least, as I started to venture into working into Asia.
Leaving Japan, where everything was pretty much open and laid out, you transitioned over to the Philippines. How did that move come about?
Well, for one, it was very different than Japan in terms of comfort. But how it came about was I was working in Japan with my wife, and she is half Filipino, half American, and she's also a professional singer as well. And we always wanted to kind of come to the Philippines and potentially produce a record and potentially, pursue a career. Myself as a producer and my wife as an artist, and we just decided to take advantage of the opportunity of already being in Asia and saying, hey, let's have a go. Let's like make some music. Let's get over to the Philippines and let's see if it matters to anyone. And that was really, it was as simple as that. It was a decision to just make that move.
Okay. Now, was that a smooth transition?
No, I mean, from the moment I made the commitment to come, and we actually had a record label that was supposed to be sponsoring us. That was supposed to be, you know, providing housing for us and things like that. But early on, it was very clear that we weren't going to get that kind of support. One second, one second. It was very clear that we weren't going to get that kind of support. And so it wasn't smooth at all. Matter of fact, it was really, really bumpy. From the moment we got to the airport, there was complications. Everything from not getting all my studio equipment shipped there on time, and then they charged me crazy amounts of money to get it out of customs. The hotel who was supposed to provide housing accommodate, sorry, the label that was supposed to provide housing accommodations for us had no housing accommodations for us. So they dropped us off at a Roach Motel, and my wife was very unhappy about that. We didn't even stay the night. We actually had to pack up and go to a different hotel. And so we were floating around the Philippines with about 10, with everything in our lives, about 10 suitcases of luggage, jumping from hotel to hotel, not knowing anything about the Philippines. We didn't have a bank account. We didn't have a cell phone. We just had some cash. And we couldn't even get a bank account because we didn't have the proper ID. We weren't residents yet. And all these things were things that were supposed to be handled by the record label. And they kind of dropped the ball. So we were floating for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, hotel to hotel, arguing, me and my wife arguing, debating whether we should stay, whether we should go. It was a mess, to say the least.
And see, that leads into my next question right there. And that is, with all of those storms coming into your life, coming at you at one time, how did you, at any point in time, did you have reservations or say, well, it's time for me to send up the white flag and say, hey, I'm going back to LA?
Yes, at every point of time, I had reservations, and my wife made sure that I had reservations. she she was constantly reminding me that this was ridiculous. But I think for me, I've always been someone who has gone towards adversity. I've always seen adversity as an opportunity to evolve. So for me, the adversity, especially coming out of such a comfortable situation, was welcomed. I didn't like it. I obviously wanted to be in a better situation. But for me, it was like, this is what we're here to do. We're here to do what is difficult, because if it wasn't difficult, other people would have done it. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was like this opportunity for us to get through this, to figure this out, to crack this code, and to lay the groundwork of the potential of Americans like us coming to a place like this, and against all the odds, figuring it out. I didn't think it was going to be easy. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't think it was going to be easy. So we decided to push on, um, definitely against my wife's better judgment. And we continued to struggle for years. And we had everything from people, the record label stealing from us to, I mean, just some of the worst situations you can imagine. My wife was blacklisted from the country on based on some technicality, and we were having to sit. We were having to sit in the mayor's office and beg them to return the issues. I mean, it was a technicality that happened when she was a little kid. and had lived here as a little kid. And so because of some technicality, she was blacklisted and had no idea, and we had to go through all of that government mess and pay off people, and so it was really, really challenging, and it just kept getting more challenging. But with each adversity came an opportunity for us to get stronger. It came an opportunity for us to, get that grit that we were going to need, because then once all those problems were solved and her career started to take off, there were new sets of problems, of being successful, and now my wife is on billboards and she's on TV and she's doing all these things that, on the surface appear wonderful, but she's miserable through most of the process. And we had to overcome those hurdles as well, and those challenges as well. And, so we were constantly gaining the necessary mental fortitude at each stage to try to just deal with whatever was being thrown at us. And the worst part about all of it was we didn't have any foundation, no family foundation, no friends. It was me and her and our first few years of marriage dealing with what appeared to be an impossible hurdle to get over. But it brought us closer in the end. So I'm thankful for all of it.
And that leads me to the part, and that is with the record label, putting your music out, things began to change there. And then you adapted or had to figure out a way, if you're going to stay here, how are you going to survive, especially sometimes in a country where they kind of limit how much work that someone that's not a national can actually do. So,
Yeah,
how did you
absolutely. And
navigate that?
so the real challenge is it's not necessarily that they limit the work, it's that the minimum wage is so low you can't really live a life that is accustomed to the way that we live based on any kind of salary here. So you couldn't go out and get a job, right? Like as an American, if you just went, and turned in some resumes, try to get a job here, you would live far below the poverty line, and it wouldn't make any sense for you to stay, right? You'd be better off just going back to the States and living beneath the poverty line, because at least there'd be government programs and things like that where you could get on your feet and you could get a job where you could at least live comfortable enough to evolve. Here, that wouldn't be the case. So really, it is sink or swim here as an American. You either build a business, become profitable, or go home with your tail tucked between your legs. There really isn't any real in between. And so as we started to go through all of these issues with the record label, and we left the record label and we go into a new record label, it became clear that like we can't be dependent on another company or another situation, getting us through this. So me and my wife both got really, really proficient at business in general. We started like, focusing on what we can control. And we put a band together and we got out into the scene and started performing and generating our own revenue. And then I got into advertising and I started building my own clientele base as a record producer, working with brands. And brands were paying me good money to do jingles, and then that led to opportunities in television. And so I started to aggressively brand myself and market myself as my own entity, separate from the record label, separate from any other corporation here. I started my own corporation. And together, me and my wife went after the industry that way, being able to control the narrative a bit more and being able to control our destiny. And as a result, we started to get work, working with different corporations and stuff. And then the confidence to know that like even in the worst case scenarios, like we can go get work, like I can book a client, and I can do a project, and my wife can book a gig and she can go perform and make enough money to pay the rent for the month. Do you know what I mean? And so that is kind of what not forced us, but allowed us to stay. But even with that, we understood that that could only last so long. We're not building a 401k. We're not working towards retirement. We're still living paycheck to paycheck. So, or project to project. So we needed to start to make the transition to how do we develop something that could generate passive income? And that's where we are today, is we started working towards the passive income goal. How can we build a team? How can we provide a service that's not solely reliant on my ability or my wife's ability, you know? And that brings us to today.
Okay. Exactly. And and that is something that let's dive into far as today because you're a forward thinker and that is with book tracks. The company was that hard far as getting started?
So that's a unique story, and I'll keep it as short as I can. But the story with BookTrack is that I was working in the advertising industry, and I was working for a production company, and that production company um, or post production company was about to close, and as they were closing and going through their issues, um, not only was I working with them, but I was also independent, right? So when they kind of folded um, at the same time they were folding, this company based in New Zealand called BookTrack was looking to outsource some of their post production work. And they had actually approached the company that I was working with that was about to close. So when they closed, I had my own production company as well. And I said, hey, you know what? We'll try to take on the work that you're offering, and you know we'll do the best that we can to help see if this is a good fit for you. And so that began our relationship with BookTrack. And my wife became she was employed by that company, BookTrack, based in New Zealand, to basically manage several studios in the Philippines that were doing post production work for for this company. So she was hired by them. I was one of the studios she was managing. And through the course of that, we said, hey, what if we just build a team for book track? And so rather than you manage multiple studios, what if we just build a team big enough to handle all of their needs, and I'll help build the team? So we pitched that idea to BookTrack, and they said, "Hey, we love it." So they flew myself and my wife to New Zealand. We pitched them a proposal for what it would cost to actually build this team, the infrastructure needed, everything from staffing the employees to building, getting a facility to getting all the necessary equipment and training. And once we agreed on a price and a number, of staff, we came back, we did all the groundwork, me and my wife ourselves. We found a staffers agency, we got all of the equipment, we found a location, we hired contractors, we set up shop, and we were on our way. And it wasn't as easy as I make it sound, but we got through it. And but again, coming from where we came from, where from the moment we got into this country, there was adversity and there was obstacles, and like, we couldn't even get a bank account, like, to now being flown to New Zealand, and them saying, name your price, what is it going to cost to set up shop in the Philippines? Like, it was a welcomed challenge that me and my wife had built up enough fortitude, enough mental and emotional fortitude to say, whatever it is, we will figure it out. And guess what? If we don't, what's the worst that can happen? We're back where we started, right? We're back to project to project, or we have to go home and we have to start over. But, at that point, is that really a bad thing? No. So we just got to a point where we were like, let's just give it a shot. And we built the company here, a location here for them. And the long and short of it is that we became the most important aspect of that company. And so eventually they migrated a majority of their business here. And what was happening in New Zealand was dissolved, and everything that was happening in the Philippines became the central hub for the business. And then me and my wife, um, we got offered shares into the business, and we really just started to take on a more ownership role along with the CEO and the board. Now I'm currently on the board as well as uh, I help run the company with our CEO and my wife, and we now have a staff of close to 60 engineers and producers who are all providing post production services for the audiobook industry globally, and we're one of the biggest providers of post production services in the world now. And so it's just been full circle how it's come about, and it's taken a lot of good people to make it happen. But at the end of the day, all of the experience that we gained from the way we arrived to this country was necessary for us to get to where we are today. And so now looking back, it's like I don't think I would have it any other way, you know.
So you learned a lot, and through all of that adversity, that kind of carved out. So you became stronger, especially you and your wife, as far as a team, you became more unified as far as through all that adversity also. Now,
Yep, absolutely.
now one thing that for our viewers who may thinking of audiobooks, they may think of Audible, but
Yes.
one thing that you guys do is totally different. And for those who don't know or haven't had I would say, the experience of having a book track or getting a product that's created from book track, we're going to take a moment just in order to show what that experience is.
She went tumbling down with a noisy clatter of armor.
Alice!
Bruce cried, running down after her. She rolled to a stop at the bottom of the stairs. For several seconds, nothing happened. But then there came a piercing wail of alien shrieks that cut straight to Bruce's core, filling him with primal dread. His mind flashed back to the memory of one of those creatures locking its jaws around his head. The glowing alien snakes inside of it had been snapping at his helmet, their translucent fangs gouging flecks out of his armored visor.
We have to run!
Axel said, jarring him from the memory. They reached the bottom of the stairs. Bruce grabbed Alice by the arm and hauled her to her feet. She stooped to recover her weapon, fumbling it as she did so.
Alice,
Bruce snapped.
get it together! I'm trying!
She cried. Axel didn't even stop to wait for them. He sprinted on for the nearest harvester.
Look at that little coward go.
Bruce muttered.
Come on.
They ran after him with winged mantises, shrieking and swooping down on all sides. Two landed in front of Axel, but he shot them both with an explosion of writhing guts. Bruce sprayed lasers at three more, diving in from behind. Alice shot one that landed beside them in its triangular head, decapitating it and leaving the glow snakes inside to come shooting out like party streamers. The wriggling parasites landed all over them. Alice screamed continuously as she frantically brushed them off, while Bruce took perverse pleasure in squishing their tiny heads between his armored fingers. One of them locked its jaws around his fingertip, and he smashed it with the butt of his rifle. Luckily, they didn't seem to be able to get through their armor. Yet.
Almost there.
Bruce said. They reached the landing ramp of the nearest harvester. Axel was already standing at the top, furiously swiping his hands through thick webs of alien silk to clear the doors to the airlock. Bruce charged up the ramp with Alice panting raggedly behind him. But suddenly, she screamed. He spun around to see two of the mantises wrestling with her on the ramp. Their spear-like forelimbs had turned out to be more dexterous than they appeared, and they'd managed to wrestle Alice's rifle from her hands.
Help!
She cried. Bruce raised his weapon to fire, but he couldn't get a clear shot. Then one of the creatures snapped its arms straight and ran her through in two places. Glowing limbs appeared sticking out of her back, and Alice gurgled softly in Bruce's ears.
No!
He cried. No longer afraid of hitting her, he fired freely at the creature that had impaled her. It exploded in a rain of wriggling guts. Dashing down the ramp, Bruce placed the barrel of his rifle directly against the carapace of the second one and pulled the trigger. Another explosion. Alice fell as it released her. Bruce left his rifle to dangle from its strap and caught Alice in his arms, carrying her up the ramp as quickly as he could. Axel screamed, firing steadily as more of the aliens swooped over them. Bruce stumbled into the airlock and Axel shut the outer doors just as a churning mass of alien monsters came boiling in. Heads and bodies were severed as one, and snakes came springing free. The decontamination cycle flared to life, cooking them with burning waves of radiation and poisoning them with chemical sprays. Alice hung limply in Bruce's arms, moaning and muttering something that he couldn't understand. Something about Sean.
Wow. That is awesome right there. And that's just the beginning right there. Now, one of the things that we didn't mention far as in the monologue, and that is you and your wife are award-winning producers. That there's so much more far as that you guys are creating, and that your vision is still evolving.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, the product that you played, thank you so much for playing that. And I think in addition to the conventional post-production services that we offer the industry, that is an innovation that we are also offering the industry, which is the soundtrack experience with music, ambiences, sound effects. And that's all kind of my brainchild based on my experience as working as a music producer. And so for me, working as a music producer, one of our biggest assets is the ability to look at an artist and assess what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then develop a product that best serves them. And so when I bring that into the audiobook industry, when I was listening to audiobooks and things like that, I was like, I feel like looking at this product and looking at the numbers and seeing that our audience is getting younger every year. And you look at the curve of technology, and now we have head tracking headphones that where you put them on the Apple Pro Maxes and you turn your head and the sounds, reorientate based on the position of your head. You look at the Apple Vision Pros that are coming out next year that are fully immersive, goggles that bring you into a virtual reality space. And so when you look at like where technology is going, you have to ask yourself, how is this going to impact the way people listen to audiobooks? And so as I started to ask myself that question, the plan started to form that I need to find a way to create a more immersive audiobook. And I need to find a way to not just create a more immersive audiobook, but to do it with a product that's already on the shelf. So meaning that rather than recreate some brand new product, what if I could go to publishers and say, hey, that book that you released last year, would you like to, earn additional revenue off that book by giving me that book and allowing me to create an immersive version of that book and then re-put it on the shelf? And that's something that is unique to BookTrack. That is something that no one really in the industry is really doing at this time. Instead, what you do have publishers that are like, we're going to create this immersive experience. We're going to go out and hire multiple narrators. We're going to go out and get a script writer to write an original piece of work that suits this, and that's a very, very big undertaking. And although it's a beautiful end product, there has to be something in between that and the original audiobook format. And so what we're trying to do is create that in between and say, hey, here's an audiobook that you've already released, give it to us and let you re-release it as an immersive experience that is future-proofed. As technology evolves, your product will be in line with that, evolution. And as your audience gets younger, this will be something that they'll find cool. And that's kind of where we ended up. And so that's the product that you heard. As far as me and my wife being award-winning producers and artists, yes, we definitely had our run of, my wife had won every award you could win, here. And then I ended up becoming the urban icon. I got the Urban Icon Award, which is kind of like a lifetime achievement award here for as a record producer and my contribution to the industry. And all of those things were wonderful. But for me, I never let those things define who I am and where I'm heading. Um, I think there are moments in time that let you know that you're doing something right and that coming here and dealing with all the adversity wasn't a waste of your time and a waste of your life, and it meant something. It meant something. But I've had the advantage, and this is probably something worth noting. Being a record producer, I've had the advantage of watching a lot of people's careers materialize and helping a lot of people's careers materialize, a lot of celebrities. And one of the things that I noticed and that I learned while helping celebrities' careers materialize is sometimes people start to believe uh, in the idea of themselves rather than see themselves for who they really are. They start to believe in the celebrity. And what happens is you get stuck in a space and time. You get stuck in this idea of who you are and what you've accomplished. And it becomes a source of anxiety and depression that makes it hard for you to face challenges in the future because you kind of have built up this idea of yourself that you've overcome these challenges and that you shouldn't have to deal with this and that you know things should come much easier to you now because of who you are and what you've accomplished. And I see that happen still to this day to a lot of celebrities and to a lot of artists that I work with, where they get stuck in this place where now all of their success is working against them. And so I just never wanted to be that guy. So now it's like I leave the success where it is in the past, and the accomplishments that I had, they're in the past. And now it's about how am I going to leverage all that wisdom to move gracefully into the future and to accept the next challenge head on and to not assume that it's going to be easy or not assume that I'm entitled or deserve something. I have to still go earn it and I still have to go take it because there's some young guy that wants to take it too and he wants to take it from me. You know what I mean? And so I have to stay sharp and I can't stay living in the past.
Right.
And that is how I ended up in the book industry, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm an award-winning record producer. Like this is
Uh-huh.
not where I saw my life going. But the reality is I go where reality brings me. And I just try to bring myself, the entirety of myself and my experience and my hopefully wisdom to the table to make the best of it. And and it looks like books now. And maybe it'll look like something else in the future. But whatever it is, I'm still going to bring the entirety of myself to it and not be stuck um, identifying as that record producer or identifying as that artist or even identifying as an executive. You know,
Mhm.
I just want to keep moving, and wherever life takes me, I want to just be ready to embrace it and go with the flow and be in the flow. You know what I mean? Be in that space where you can just move with grace. Um, and right now it's got me in the book industry. I'm happy to be here, and I feel like I have something to give. Me and my wife both, we feel like we have something to contribute in terms of innovation, in terms of experience, and being that we live in the Philippines, a third world country, and being able to provide jobs for very deserving people in an industry where it doesn't even exist here. I mean that we're there. Our company is the only company in this country that is doing audiobooks at this level.
Mhm.
So, that's something to be proud of and something to kind of move into the future with grace.
That is amazing right there. How did you come into the technology space?
Well, the book track was already on that tip when they basically employed Amber, my wife and myself. They were
Uh-huh.
already on the tech side of the industry. They were actually had their own proprietary software that they had developed that was supposed to support, soundtracking and things like that for audiobooks. It didn't really pan out the way that they had hoped it would. And then myself and my wife started to kind of reimagine their initial idea and kind of give it an overhaul. And actually, as we've given it an overhaul, it's less techy than initially it was, when they had their own proprietary software and stuff. But being that we came into a tech company, it kind of forced myself and my wife to, get a little bit more tech savvy, to start to understand where the industry is going, where tech is going, how AI will affect our industry, how just apps in general will affect our industry, and how we can position our company to be at the receiving end of that. And along with my wife and I and our CEO Mark Cameron, we've just kind of gone with the flow, and we're just trying to find the best way to still stay a part of that conversation. But yeah, as far as the tech side, that would be my weakest point, right? I think the strongest point for me is more a creative side, just generally being someone that has some leadership qualities and that at the same time is very creative. And I like being innovative. I like finding new ways to approach uh, an industry, and because I believe in a unique identifier. I kind of believe that every company should have something that makes them unique, an offering, a service that makes them unique. And so that's where I come in, is finding out what is our unique identifier and how can we, position ourselves in the industry to really be able to contribute. And, I think this is where how we can do it.
Okay. And one of the things that you were part of a band, so you know how it is bringing a team together and keeping that cohesion together. How was those challenges?
Well, actually, I learned a lot of leadership skills being a music producer, because predominantly what my job is to kind of, manage the environment of the studio. So I'm working with different artists, I'm working with writers, I'm working with musicians, I'm working with, guitar players, whoever. Sometimes I'm working with directors of films. And so my job is to really like understand their vision and then be the guy that gets us across the finish line. And so in that, you learn a whole lot about leadership. You learn a lot about how to motivate people, how to stay on course so that you can get to the finish line, and also just how to deal with a lot of personalities at one time, a lot of egos in the room. When you work in my industry, you're up against a lot of egos. You're up against artists who have their own egos, instrumentalists who have their own egos, and then executives who have their own egos, directors who have their own egos. And so and you're the guy that's got to manage those egos and somehow churn out a finished product that everyone loves. So you learn a lot about leadership when you are in that situation. So when I started, uh, being an executive in this company and hiring employees, I found it way easier to lead employees because the egos weren't there, right? Like, so, people were happy to have a job, people were happy to listen, people were happy to learn, and they saw me as the leader. Um, and that was very different than working in as a record producer, because although people respect me, they everyone comes in the room wanting to be a leader, but no one really takes on the responsibility of getting across the finish line more than the record producer. But I have to make you feel like you are a leader. I have to make you feel like your opinions are valid, and sometimes they're not. You know what I mean? Or so it's a much it's a juggling act being a record producer a lot of times. Whereas being an executive in a corporation, it's not so much of a juggling act. You are able to hire people. You're able to figure out, how you want to get to the finish line, and then you implement that with a team. And then either the team is adopting your, philosophy, or they're not. And I think one of the good things about me being a leader is because I've had to work with so many egos, I'm also very open to suggestion. I'm very open to even my employees. Like we'll get in a room, and something that I've put into motion is just not working. and they'll let me know, hey, this is just not working. And I'm okay with that. I'm like, okay, what would you do? You know what I mean? And it's very simple because for me, the only thing I care about is getting to the finish line, and I want to get to the finish line and I want to do it better than I did it last time. That's it. And that I got that skill from making thousands of songs, getting to the finish line. That's it. I've had a 20-year career of just getting to the finish line, project after project after project. And the reality is, the only thing that ever has mattered to me is how do I do it better than I did it last time? Sometimes it's really evaluating the failures. Where did I go wrong? And so I bring that into the corporate world with me. It's all about how do I get to the finish line? And the bigger the team, hopefully the easier it gets.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of the way we do it.
And,
And so far so good.
and that's an amazing thing that you had just said right there, how you broke that down. And that was that bringing a team together is listening far as to, okay, is there a better way of doing this right here? You still have your vision, and you want to stick to that because you don't want to get or you don't want to deviate from the first shiny object right there and say, oh, instead of following through. But it's how do you get that end result right there? So I'll just add, I think uh, there's a lot of companies that could adopt that philosophy right there. Maybe they should have produced records, that may have helped their companies out because you hear sometimes the strife that goes in a company right there that we may not see it on the outside, but it does reverberate far as inside, and sometimes it can even affect the product right there. So this program is about entrepreneurs. So, what advice, or I wouldn't say advice because sometimes people don't want to, don't advise me on anything, but what suggestions would you offer someone, and that can be transferable to whatever industry they may choose to pursue?
It's a great question. Well, earlier you were asking, you had alluded to, where do I see the, you know, the myself going in the future? And this may be a piece of kind of not necessarily advice, but just my philosophy that I can share now. Is if there's anything that I've learned up to this point, it's that I'm horrible at predicting the future, but I'm a lot better at being prepared for the future now. And I really think that is key for anyone that is on a path of development, on a path of what comes next is, you know, trying to predict the future, you're usually going to get it wrong, right? But just trying to be prepared, like trying to build a mental fortitude, trying to, if there's a particular craft that you want to be, you want to specialize in, then continue to evolve in that craft to the best of your ability and just be ready for the changes, be ready for the pivots. And I think the most important thing is always self-evaluate. Like you can't control your circumstances. A lot of times your circumstances are out of your control, but what you can control is how you perceive your circumstances and how you move internally. So sorry, my dog is throwing a fit. Anyways, but you can deal with how you handle yourself through adversity, through whatever the choices are happening. So I think that's the most important thing is just self-evaluate. Don't try to predict the future. Just be prepared for it. You know, be prepared for every outcome and use every day to prepare for every outcome. And I think you land on your feet, you know, and wherever that is, it's usually better than whatever you were predicting.
That's good.
Right.
That's excellent philosophy right there. That it sounds like something that really Marcus Aurelius
I
Immersive.
just read his book. I read his book, Meditations. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh, yes.
Marcus's book, but Meditations. And yeah, I mean, he's actually someone that I would quote. I mean, I think his philosophy with life is absolutely spot on. And yeah, it really comes down to that simple, right? And hopefully the rest we allow space for life to work out for us.
Now, one other thing, and that is it's going to go back to a previous conversation we had, and that's about failure. Because so often people are stuck because of the fear of failing.
Yeah. One of the things that we had talked about earlier was that uh, failure is a part of the process. And I think it's something that people overlook. It's that they look at failure as like, oh, because I failed, I'm not good at this. Yes, that there usually failure could be an indication that you're not good at something. But more importantly than that, failure serves a much more important role. And that role is to help you evolve. Um, and so I look at failure as an opportunity for growth. And so I reevaluate. And I think the mindset to have with failure is expect it to be part of the process of success. So when someone says, "How do you become successful?" The first thing I tell them, get good at failing. And that is not just something you write on a postcard. That is not just something you read in a book. It is the reality of life. And if you can embrace that reality of life, you start to fail less. And or you start to take more out of your failures, not just the fact that you failed. You start to evaluate where to turn left next time instead of right, or where to stay to the course. And the quicker you're able to evaluate those failures, the quicker you get to success. Now, if you allow those failures to set you back, it just takes longer to get to success. But like that's the thing about like gamblers. Like a lot of people who become super wealthy, they gamble. They just take risks. But what they don't tell you about a lot of the gamblers is a lot of gamblers, they anticipate not winning every time. So they strategically lose quickly. It's like, let me get in, let me lose quickly so that I can win quicker, right? And then you have some people that are so afraid to lose that they hold on to all their money until the last minute and then they put it all in one place and then they have a big loss, right? Because they were afraid of losing. But then a strategic gambler will be like, no, I anticipate I'm going to lose a lot. So let me just throw in a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, boom, 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 and then learn what I need to learn and then dump the big amount here. You know what I'm saying? And that's how businessmen really roll. And I think it's something that I've learned being around businessmen more, and it's something that I've learned. Going through this crazy life of moving to the Philippines and doing a whole lot of failing. Now it's just about if I'm going to jump into something new, I want to fail quick. That's it. Fail quick and evolve quick.
All right. And with that fear, Marcus, I have to say this, and that is I appreciate very much that you're taking the time to share those words of wisdom and your story for us with us here on this program. And I'm hoping that the audience or that entrepreneur that's on the fence, or I'll use this word here. I try not to use a lot of big words, but on the precipice of taking action, that they will go back, replay this, take notes, and more than anything else is in hearing the story is actually applying things to their circumstances and taking some action, because I think the biggest thing that I've gotten from the moment I began to hear your story, and that was that you had all you had all kinds of justifications in order to stay stuck or to bail out and say, hey, I'm going to go and take the easy route. I'll go back to find another Disney, or I'll continue and write far as with the record labels until that time ends. But instead, you pivoted and you took a gamble, and that is, like you said, you moved and you adapted far as to everything that was constantly evolving around you, and you're continuously reinventing yourself. So
Thank you.
continued success.
Thank you so much. And it was an honor and a privilege to be on your show. Appreciate you having me. And yes, I hope it means something to your audience.
For people who want to know more about your company,
Yeah, you can contact us at our website, which is booktrack.com. We also have a YouTube page, which is also booktrack, is our handle for our YouTube page, as well as an Instagram, which is also, you can easily search us as booktrack, and we come right up. I also have a personal Instagram, which is MK Davis Jr. at Instagram. And yeah, those are the best ways to reach us. If you'd like to know more about what we do, definitely visit the website. We have all of our services. You can also contact us there as well.
if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share it with a friend. Your support means the world to us. We'll see you in the next one.